Welcome to Fantasy Audiobook. Chapter 11. Why are there so many geniuses and can't count me as one? After a few words with Fu Wenbo, Chu Huan returned to the topic and pointed to the biting wolf next to him. I know that there must be beast crystals in every vicious beast. But that's a normal situation. Didn't this piercing wolf become like this with my tool soul skill? So I guess that the beast crystal on its body will have problems due to the influence of my tool soul skills. Fu Wenbo thought for a while and said, "Don't say it, there's really such a possibility. After all, your boy's soul skill is a bit weird. This way, I can't use my soul power. You inject your soul power into this piercing wolf's body and sweep it around. If you can detect other energy fluctuations, it means that there are beast crystals in this piercing wolf's body." Quote. Under the guidance of Fu Wenbo, Chu Huan called the piercing wolf to his side, and then injected his soul power into the body of the piercing wolf as Fu Wenbo said. After more than 10 seconds, after Chu Huan's soul power swam around inside the piercing wolf's body, he didn't feel the existence of the beast crystal. Seeing this, Chu Huan understood that the beast crystal in the biting wolf's body was indeed absorbed by himself following the previous system's prompt. It's not right. Today, even in the classroom, Chu Huan has seen the beast crystal 3 times. The ones who were in the classroom before were not worth it. When he returned home, Chu Huan was holding the 1-star bronze beast crystal system before he could react. If it was calculated according to the previous situation, this bone-piercing wolf was still nearly 10 meters away from him. How could he be able to directly absorb the energy of the beast crystal in the bone-piercing wolf's body from a long distance? In doubt, Chu Huan thought about dealing with Wenbo and asked, "Teacher, do you still have beast crystals on you?" Fu Wenbo asked curiously, "Yes, what's wrong?" Chu Huan said, "Take it out and let me see it." Although I don't understand what Chu Huan wants to do now. But Fu Wenbo still wiped his space watch with one hand, and then took out a black iron 1-star beast crystal. Looking at the beast crystal in Fu Wenbo's hand, Chu Huan stared at the beast crystal in Fu Wenbo's hand without moving. That's it. 5 seconds. 10 seconds. 15 seconds. ... Until half a minute passed, Chu Huan's mind didn't show any hint that the system could absorb the energy of the beast crystal in Fu Wenbo's hand. On the contrary, Fu Wenbo was a little overwhelmed by Chu Huan's scorching gaze and shoved the beast crystal into Chu Huan's hand. "Forget it, it's just a black iron 1-star beast crystal, you can take it and study it slowly." Originally, Chu Huan just wanted to find a beast crystal for a test, but how did he expect that Fu Wenbo would be so grand? Therefore, listening to Fu Wenbo's words, Chu Huan put Fu Wenbo's Hei Tai Yixing in his pocket without even thinking about it. Then he raised his head and asked with a face that was not surprised but could not see his anger, "Teacher, don't you have a more advanced beast crystal here?" Seeing Chu Huan's serious look, Fu Wenbo gave Chu Huan a determined look and then said with a bit of sigh, "Boy, all the wool has come on me, are you black enough?" Quote. Seeing Fu Wenbo discovering his own thoughts, Chu Huan smiled shyly, "It's all teacher, you teach well." Fu Wenbo. At first glance, Chu Huan's words sounded like a compliment. Combined with what Fu Wenbo said to Chu Huan in the previous sentence, combined with the compliment of Chu Huan now, no matter how Fu Wenbo heard it, he felt that Chu Huan was turning a corner and saying that he was also black. In this regard, Fu Wenbo couldn't help but look strangely. "Why didn't I find out that you were so shameless in the past 2 years?" Chu Huan shrugged and said, "Isn't there a chance to show yourself like Mr. Fu Wenbo? It's not too late to find out now." Fu Wenbo. At this moment, Fu Wenbo learned from Chu Huan what it means to separate the heart from the belly. He had been Chu Huan's head teacher for 2 years, but he had never seen that Chu Huan was such a thick-hearted person before. While speechless in his heart, Fu Wenbo sighed, "Do your own thing to get enough food and clothing, don't keep thinking about picking wool from my side. Teacher and I, too, have no surplus food in the landlord's house." Chu Huan looked at Fu Wenbo in surprise and said, "Teacher, aren't you single? Shouldn't the beast crystal spend it alone? Why do you think you are so poor?" Fu Wenbo's fists clenched tightly. Is the topic of being single a problem? A little depressed, "Don't overdo it," Fu Wenbo said that he didn't want to continue talking to Chu Huan. Liver damage. In this way, after waiting for half an hour, while the two of them were waiting quietly, the biting wolf, who had been teased by the idol and bored Chu Huan, was finally unable to bear the inappropriate behavior of Chu Huan next to him. Just crooked and slumped to the ground. Fu Wenbo, who was on the side, noticed the movement and asked, "Dead?" Chu Huan patted the head of the biting wolf on the ground, turned his head to deal with Wenbo and nodded, "It's dead." And after this biting wolf died, Chu Huan felt it and found that the soul power in his body was also completely consumed. From this point, Chu Huan can also confirm that the beasts controlled by, carrying the coffin march, use their own soul power as their vitality. Once one's own soul power can no longer be supplied, then these controlled beasts will die immediately. Thinking of this, Chu Huan rubbed his chin to himself and said, "Hey. Don't say it, with this skill, I mean that there is an extra war beast who is not afraid of death at any time, and there is no need to worry about the problem of death, bad if it's a big deal, just replace it." However, this coffin-carrying march took a little longer, and it took nearly 2 or 3 minutes. Quote. Hearing Chu Huan's words in his ears, Fu Wenbo, who was next to him, said angrily, "Are you content? I won't talk about the weird aspects of your soul tool skill, and it also comes with this control function, are you still not satisfied? I don't know how such a tool soul is classified as an auxiliary type for you." As he said that, Fu Wenbo looked at the freezing wolf next to Chu Huan. Looking back on the effect of Chu Huan's soul tool skill, Fu Wenbo himself was an awakener of 3-star silver, and he couldn't help but feel a little envious in his heart. Why are there so many geniuses and can't count me as one? This is an unfair world. Chapter 12. After confirming the effect of Chu Huan's tool soul skill, Fu Wenbo also took Chu Huan to the entrance when he came. Except for some special beast secret realms, most of the beast secret realm passage entrances are fixed. And there is only one. Therefore, for the awakened person, entering the secret realm of the beast must be clear about his own course of action. Otherwise, once you get lost in the secret realm of beasts, it will be troublesome. By the way, Teacher Fu, when you tested your skills before, the coffin was obviously not opened. How did you get injured? While walking, Chu Huan suddenly asked. Chu Huan clearly remembered that when he was playing the March of Carrying the Coffin, before, due to the influence of his tool soul skill, Fu Wenbo also had a -1 value on his head. Combined with the situation of the biting wolf, Chu Huan has this question. Hearing this, Fu Wenbo shook his head and said, "I don't know, I didn't feel any signs of attack from beginning to end, I only saw the 5 black shadows summoned from your song smiled at me and made my nose bleed, already." Smile. Are these phantoms still smiling? Chu Huan looked at Fu Wenbo in surprise. Fu Wenbo said angrily, "You can even do slow shaking and opening coffins with those phantoms, so what's so strange about laughing?" Chu Huan recalled and nodded and said, "Yes, but a smile can hurt Mr. Fu. Could it be a mental attack?" Fu Wenbo thought for a while and said, "It's not like, with a mental attack, with my current mental power, you shouldn't be able to hurt me, it can only be said to be another special attack method." After hearing what Fu Wenbo said, Chu Huan wanted an introduction to his previous skills. Now it seems that the effect of my own soul skill is very likely to be mandatory. And according to the skill introduction, unless someone like Fu Wenbo has far more strength and level than himself, once his tool soul skill has an effect, the target can't resist. Thinking of this, Rao Shi Chu Huan couldn't help but feel a little ups and downs. If he said that, the effect of his own soul skill was far stronger than Chu Huan thought. At this time, Fu Wenbo on the side, "But your tool soul skill is really evil. I don't know how such a thing can be an auxiliary tool soul. However, you can go to the Awakened Association to apply for a full-time job modification. In this way, when you form a team with other Awakens in the future, you can serve as a combat team member, and you can also allocate more resources." Chu Huan shrugged and said, "Forget it, I think the support is pretty good." Hearing Chu Huan's answer, Fu Wenbo gave Chu Huan a puzzled look. Don't change. In the college entrance examination, the ones who get the most points are the awakened ones and the awakened ones with multiple souls like you. If you can modify it to become a combat type awakener, the bonus points can also be changed from the original 20 points to 30 points. With your grades in the culture class, even if the combat convenience is weaker, it is not impossible to enter a top-level university. What's more, in the university and even in the future, the average awakened team will allocate less resources each time they enter the ferocious beast secret realm than the combat type awakened. In the long run, auxiliary awakeners will always suffer a bit. Quote. Chu Huan curled his lips and said, "It's only 10 extra points, so forget it. Anyway, the scores of the auxiliary departments in those top universities are not high, you can enter." When a mature awakener team encounters an enemy or a beast, the first one who will bear the brunt is the combat awakener. Not to mention suffering, the key is the danger. Wherever it seems to be a support, just stand aside and mute your skills. Other teammates have to be protected, and it can be said that they are the group pets in the team. And for Chu Huan, the auxiliary identity is not a layer of protection. Be happy and be a jerk when you have nothing to do. Who really was staring at him? When he broke through the guards of his teammates and appeared in Chu Huan, he suddenly found that Chu Huan was the most terrifying one in the entire team. That picture, just thinking about Chu Huan makes the whole body feel comfortable. What kind of combat occupation? Enough support. As for the distribution of the awakened squad in the future, that will be a matter of the future. As long as the strength is strong enough, the big deal is that Chu Huan enters the mysterious realm of beasts alone. Isn't it delicious to eat it alone? Seeing that Chu Huan is quite satisfied with his current auxiliary status, Fu Wenbo is also a little puzzled. Looking at Chu Huan, he couldn't help but mutter, "Strange, I always feel like you want to be an assistant like this, there's nothing wrong with holding back." Chu Huan shook his head and said, "Mr. Fu, you can't save others by yourself. My nickname in the class is Honest and Reliable Xiao Langjun. I'm notoriously honest and loyal. If you say that again, I'll sue you for slander." Fu Wenbo looked at Chu Huan like a ghost. "You're the only one who is honest and reliable, Xiao Langjun. I think you have a thick face and black heart. You are all right." In this chat, the two gradually walked to the entrance of the secret realm. More than an hour later, under the pickup and drop-off of Fu Wenbo, Chu Huan, who was full of food and drink, returned home. Compared with the doubts when he left before, Chu Huan, who has returned home now, has a smile on his face. Through previous experiments, Chu Huan can basically determine the power of his Suona tool soul skill. Not only can it directly damage the target, but it can also directly kill the target and turn it into its own puppet. The effect of the Suona tool soul is so strong, which makes Chu Huan more curious about the tool soul skill of another, Arhu tool soul. Just thinking of the system points required for the awakener's soul skill, Chu Huan gave another wry smile. After shaking his head, Chu Huan exhaled his system panel with a thought. Since the tool soul has awakened, the effect of the first tool soul skill has also been determined, and the next step is to consider the development direction. Chapter 13. People without thought, he must worry about. Because of the existence of beasts and awakened people, this world is naturally dangerous. Especially in the secret realm of beasts, there are no moral and legal constraints, everything only depends on strength and mood. Whether it is resources or some advanced cultivation techniques, they will all become the reason for people to be targeted. Not to mention that there are a handful of people who are born out of unusual paths and whose mental and brain circuits are not normal. So, unless Chu Huan wants to be like ordinary people, he will be wiped out in 100 years. Otherwise, these issues have to be considered. Not to mention that the higher the level of the awakened, the longer the lifespan. It is said that once you enter the platinum level awakened person, the life expectancy can reach 500. The attraction of this is absolutely deadly. Unfortunately, Chu Huan cherishes his life, so for Chu Huan, the secret realm of beasts is basically the most nostalgic place besides home. And if you want to solve the trouble, the biggest reliance is nothing more than strength. There is a saying that all conspiracies are as fragile as paper in the face of absolute strength. Therefore, with the system in place, now Chu Huan must consider how to improve his strength as soon as possible through the system. Take a look at your system panel. Host, Chu Huan. HP, 180 180ths. Level, 1 star awakened apprentice, soul power required for upgrade, 200 400ths. Tool soul, Arhu, Suona. Physical constitution, 1.8 basic standard is 1. Strength, 1.6 base standard is 1. Agility, 1.7 basic standard is 1. Mental strength, 2.32 Basic Standard is 1. Tool Soul Skill. Suona Tool Soul. Coffin Carrying March Level 1. System points required to upgrade, 0.001. Auxiliary Skill. Basic Soul Power Method. Current system points, 81 inches. After taking a look at his various attributes, Chu Huan thought about it, and then Chu Huan took out the black iron 1-star beast crystal that was corrupted from Fu Wenbo. After each promotion of the awakened, various attributes can be improved through corresponding training. Like the current Chu Huan, under the training of the school, the 4 basic attributes can be slowly improved. It's just that the free training of these schools is obviously unrealistic to bring the benefits that Chu Huan expects in the short term. Therefore, for Chu Huan, the way to improve his strength in the short term now is simple. Krypton Gold. Stack up your physical attributes through system points. But after trying it today, only 10 system points can make Chu Huan increase 0.1 attribute points. In other words, even if the beast crystal with 1 black iron and 1 star in Chu Huan's hands is converted into system points, it is only enough to increase Chu Huan's physical attributes by 1 point. The improvement brought can be said to be minimal. The only way is for Chu Huan to spend the rest of his savings and then go to the Awakened store to buy a batch of beast crystals and exchange them all for system points to improve himself. Forget it. The system is all there. As long as the strength is enough to easily hunt down the beasts with 1 star of Heitai, are you afraid of running out of money? The thought fell, Chu Huan grabbed the key and went out again. An hour later, Chu Huan returned home with an extra gift box in his hand. In this gift box, there are 8 beast crystals of black iron and 1 star. Instead, at the moment, Chu Huan's card contained only $1,000 left. After taking a deep breath, Chu Huan grabbed all the 8 beast crystals in the gift box and chose to transform them. A minute later, along with the 8 beast crystals and the 1 black iron 1-star beast crystal obtained from Fu Bowen, they turned into powder and fell into the trash can. Chu Huan's system points also changed from the previous 2. The number became the current, 981. After successfully getting enough system points, Chu Huan focused on the system panel. As a man, in addition to strength, speed and durability are equally important. Don't think wrong, Chu Huan only thinks about the time to face the beast. As long as Chu Huan's speed is fast, he can attack and retreat and run, but he can still retreat if he is defeated. There is a saying that is good, as long as I am fast enough, the car is real, no, the enemy will not be able to catch up with me. With the coffin carrying march, Chu Huan can be a hands-off shopkeeper and leave everything to the puppet under his control. After a quick evaluation based on his current strengths and weaknesses, Chu Huan's eyes were sure. The next moment, the system points that had just been piled up quickly dropped in Chu Huan's thoughts. Instead, Chu Huan's agility attribute has rapidly improved. However, just when Chu Huan's agility attribute increased to 10 points in Chu Huan's constant kryptonite, when Chu Huan wanted to improve his agility again, a system message appeared. The preconditions are insufficient, please improve the physical attributes of the host. Seeing the message that popped up, Chu Huan frowned lightly. But after a few seconds, Chu Huan was relieved. Although the awakened person's basic attributes can be greatly enhanced with the improvement of strength. But no matter how it is enhanced, it is centered around the body. Just imagine, if an awakened person's strength reaches 100 points, but his physique is only 1 point, the result is that the awakened person punches down and has not hit the enemy, and his body can't bear the powerful force first, and cracked. The same is true for Chu Huan now. The agility of 10 points has already reached the limit that Chu Huan's body can bear. Then, looking at his remaining 151 system points, Chu Huan added all of them to the strength attribute. The transfer power attribute has been raised to 3.2. Feeling the lightness of his body after feeling the Krypton gold, Chu Huan smiled lightly. In such a short period of time, his attributes are able to have such a big change. Chu Huan just wanted to ask, who else? At this moment. Chapter 14. An hour later, the biting wolf dimension space. Compared to when Fu Wenbo entered before, Chu Huan was more careful now. Perhaps because of nervousness, it was still this biting wolf dimension, but it made Chu Huan feel more gloomy. While walking, Chu Huan rubbed his stomach and frowned slightly. I don't know if the place where I ate with Fu Wenbo at noon was not very hygienic, which made Chu Huan feel a little bloated before. But other than that, it doesn't feel too obvious to have much impact on Chu Huan's current actions. Afterwards, walking slowly in this secret realm in a state of tiptoe, Chu Huan's eyes were constantly looking around. I'm afraid that if I'm not careful, a piercing wolf will come running towards him from nowhere. Unlike when he was with Fu Boan before, he met a biting wolf in just 100 meters. This time, Chu Huan walked for nearly 500 meters in the secret realm of the piercing wolf, but he did not find a single piercing wolf. But the more solemn Chu Huan's expression became. You know, the biting wolf is a ferocious beast that lives in groups. It usually appears in gangs. Only in the outermost area of this secret realm will there be some lone biting wolves. If you continue to go deeper, once you encounter a few or a dozen bone-piercing wolves, it will be troublesome. After all, Chu Huan is alone now. Without a high-level and experienced bodyguard like Fu Wenbo, how could it be possible? Courage is something that is learned, so those who are naturally bold, ignorant and fearless will have the word, stupid, in the prefix, and their full name is stupid and bold. Without the souls of dozens of piercing wolves in his hands, Chu Huan couldn't possibly be able to sway in this secret realm of beasts. After thinking about it, Chu Huan could only give up the idea of continuing to move forward vertically, and turn to the small forest next to him to see if he could find the single biting wolf by luck. While walking, Chu Huan pushed aside the branches and leaves in front of him and passed through the weeds in front of him. However, just when Chu Huan had just passed through the weeds in front of him, as his vision recovered, Chu Huan, who had just passed through the weeds, froze instantly. The reason is very simple. At this moment, in front of Chu Huan, a biting wolf is staring at Chu Huan with its head up and motionless. The body is slightly arched, and the green eyes are full of madness and violence. The key is that the distance between this biting wolf and Chu Huan is only less than 3 meters apart. It's almost a pounce on this biting wolf. FCK. Seeing a biting wolf in front of him with a fierce light and gradually showing his fangs, Chu Huan's mouth twitched and he couldn't help but utter a foul language in his heart. At the same time, just like most people react when they are caught off guard, Chu Huan took a subconscious step back before he could regain his senses. But this step back was like a signal. The body of the piercing wolf in front of Chu Huan that had been bowed all the time was stretched like a spring. A vertical leap made an arc in the air and flew towards Chu Huan. FK. Seeing this scene, Chu Huan scolded secretly, and jumped with his legs slightly squatting. When the body was in the air, the biting wolf closest to Chu Huan had already jumped in front of Chu Huan. However, just when the mouth of this piercing wolf was about to bite down towards Chu Huan, who was more responsive, raised his hands and pressed it on the piercing wolf's head first. Just like a child playing a vault, the crotch directly crossed this piercing wolf. Puff. But I don't know if it was because of the sudden tension, or because of the stimulation caused by too much movement, that caused Chu Huan's body, who had been feeling uncomfortable from the beginning, to react. At the moment when two hands pressed the head and crotch of this piercing wolf and crossed the top of this piercing wolf, a light wind suddenly blew through Chu Huan's skin, blowing the hair on this piercing wolf's face quickly swaying left and right. Many times, gastrointestinal problems are just a rush of anger. Just like Chu Huan now, after this breath was released, the belly that had been feeling bloated all the time was instantly relieved. It's just that the world has never been quiet, and some are just other people or beasts helping you move forward. Chu Huan is comfortable, but the biting wolf that was directly exhaled by the gas from Chu Huan felt a little bad. In the corner of Chu Huan's eyes, he could clearly see signs that the original green eyes of this piercing wolf were turning white. As we all know, canine sense of smell is more than 100 times more developed than humans. In terms of racial talent, fierce beasts are even more powerful than similar animals outside. There was also a strange low roar from the wolf's mouth. He successfully jumped over this piercing wolf, and after landing, Chu Huan turned his head to look at this piercing wolf for the first time. However, he saw that this biting wolf did not directly attack Chu Huan when he landed, but instead waved a paw around his nose, and his head was constantly shaking. Seeing that this biting wolf hesitated and did not continue to attack him, Chu Huan seized the opportunity to quickly mobilize the soul power in his body and rushed towards the suona in his left ventricle. The next second, as the suona appeared in front of Chu Huan, the familiar, suona, sound was already resounding. At the moment when the music sounded, the bone-piercing wolf in the distance seemed to have recovered and rushed towards Chu Huan again with a loud howl. Noticing the piercing wolf's movements, his body burst back while maintaining a safe distance from the piercing wolf, and his soul power was continuously injected into the suona. Then, between the rhythms of the music, the phantoms of the 5 coffin-carrying people and the pitch-black coffin successfully converged under the black notes. The originally quiet environment was also a little more noisy because of the swaying figures of the coffin-carrying people and the reverberating music. Along with it, the surrounding wind is also noisy. After more than 10 seconds, Chu Huan's mouth also showed a chuckle when he watched the piercing wolf that had been eyeing him before entering the black coffin and being held by 4 coffin-lifting phantoms on his shoulders, shaking quickly with the beat of the music. As soon as Brother He lifts it up, the world will come in vain. Chapter 15. A minute later, as the song ended, the 5 strange coffin bearers and the coffin in front of Chu Huan disappeared. Instead, Chu Huan's system points increased a bit. At the same time, there is also a dead spirit-biting wolf who is motionless, docile and obedient. After successfully turning this biting wolf into his little friend through his coffin-carrying march, Chu Huan didn't take this undead biting wolf to find other biting wolves for the first time. Instead, after walking to the side, he started to control the undead biting wolf to walk 100 meters away and then ordered it to move at the fastest speed. During the process, Chu Huan also started suddenly from time to time to increase his speed. If a worker wants to be good, he must sharpen his tools. Although Chu Huan's attributes have been improved through Krypton Gold, his experience is still a piece of blank paper when dealing with beasts. Therefore, instead of directly taking this stinging wolf, which has been transformed into a necromantic beast, to search for other targets, it is better to know the speed difference between yourself and the stinging wolf through the undead stinging wolf that you control in advance. How big? In this way, it is also convenient for Chu Huan to make the most correct response at the first time when he encounters other piercing wolves later. In this experiment, Chu Huan found that he didn't need to speak directly when he was controlling this undead piercing wolf. Even if it is an order in the heart, this undead biting wolf will also respond. After a 10-minute test to determine the speed difference between himself and the bone wolf, Chu Huan continued to move in this secret realm with the undead bone wolf beside him. After figuring out the situation of the piercing wolf, there was another thug who was not afraid of death, and Chu Huan was no longer walking on tiptoe. All of a sudden, the confidence is enough. Not long after, in Chu Huan's eyes, 3 other piercing wolves were discovered. Almost when Chu Huan discovered the 3 piercing wolves lying on the ground in the distance, the other party also discovered Chu Huan. Immediately, the 3 bone-piercing wolves who had been resting lazily stood up from the ground in unison, their muscles tensed and ready to attack at any time. In response, Chu Huan chuckled lightly, patted the head of the undead biting wolf under control beside him, then pointed to the 3 hostile and fierce biting wolves in the distance and said, "Cut them." The voice fell, and the necromantic wolf next to Chu Huan rushed out like an emotionless machine. At the same time, the 3 bone-piercing wolves in the distance, who had been keeping vigilance, looked at the same kind that was rushing towards them, without the slightest hesitation, and greeted them with their hands while howling. The distance of 100 meters was shortened in just 2 seconds under the rapid rush of both sides, and the battle was triggered instantly. Seeing the 4 stinging wolves in the distance fighting together, Chu Huan did not start together, but stood on the spot and constantly controlled the undead stinging wolf that belonged to him. Why are the beasts so scary? In addition to the strength of the beast itself, it is also because of the ferocity and viciousness of the beast. If you want to describe it, these beasts are just like those in people who are more stunned. But as the old saying goes, the horizontal is afraid of being dumb, and the dumb is afraid of dying. Although the previous biting wolf was successfully controlled by Chu Huan through the coffin-carrying march, his strength did not improve much. But the key is that this undead piercing wolf is already dead. There will be no fear and no pain. Under the control of Chu Huan, he continued to attack without fear of death. Even if his body was injured by other piercing wolves, he still firmly carried out Chu Huan's instructions. This result also led to more or less wounds on the other 3 piercing wolves in less than a minute. The undead biting wolf controlled by Chu Huan, even if its throat was scratched, seemed to be unaffected at all, and it continued to wave its claws and open its mouth to bite the opponent. After ignoring the attacks of the other 2 piercing wolves and successfully biting through the neck of one piercing wolf, the remaining 2 piercing wolves couldn't help but retreat as they watched the madness of the undead piercing wolves. There is no problem with cruelty, the key target seems to be a fool. So, under the control of Chu Huan, he successfully killed a bone-piercing wolf, and he turned around and rushed towards the second bone-piercing wolf, which was obviously about to retreat. 10 minutes later, after the 3 wolves were killed by this one undead piercing wolf, the undead piercing wolf, which was fierce and unusual a second ago, swayed twice and fell to the ground softly. Going forward to the inspection room, Chu Huan found that the soul power in the body of this undead biting wolf had been completely consumed. Will injury or constant attacks speed up the consumption of soul power? After muttering in his heart, Chu Huan looked at the bodies of the other 3 bone-piercing wolves. March of carrying the coffin, can directly kill the living beast and transform it into a necromantic beast. Can it be used directly on the body of the beast? Quote, if it is said that his coffin-carrying march can only have an effect on the living target, then after the controlled target dies, Chu Huan must spend a lot of time looking for a new target to become a younger brother. But if it can directly affect the corpse, if one is sacrificed, Chu Huan can immediately choose a random one to continue to help him fight. It is equivalent to saying that as long as there are enough corpses, no amount of beasts can't bear such constant consumption. Grind the iron pestle into a needle to find out. In curiosity, Chu Huan's eyes locked on one of the piercing wolves, and the Suona appeared in front of Chu Huan again as his soul power surged. When the loud and unique timbre reverberated, the coffin-carrying phantom was once again summoned by Chu Huan's tune. After a few minutes, Chu Huan took in a breath of fresh air, looking at the new necromancer who stood up and shook his head. It can really have an effect on the corpse of the beast. This is a great deal. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe.